Tune in to UFO Undercover, Wednesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern, with your host, Joe Montaldo, right here on the Paranormal Radio Network.
I had enough.
Well, you drove out there into the middle of nowhere and had some sort of loud verbal display challenging ET in general out in the middle of nowhere?
That's what I was doing. I actually had a pistol in my hand at the time. I was really ticked off. When I was having this fit, I was waving the gun in the air, okay, and I had this fit. And at this moment, I said, okay.
He was a Louisiana man named MONTALDO. Folks around called him Six Gun Joe. Worked with ICAR, don't you know, investigating UFOs. Out for a drive with a gal one night, they stopped to check out the reporting site. When an alien lit right there on the ground, he commenced to throwing his weight around. Now, old Six Gun didn't take too kindly to that kind of thing, especially without Vaseline or anything like that, you know. Seriously. Well, Six Gun looked that critter right in the eye and said, "Any last wish before you die, yo?" Reached for his gun, quick as a twitch, and said, "Fill your claw, you son of a bitch."
Welcome to UFO Undercover, with your host, Joe Montaldo.
Blog Talk Radio.
Hello. Welcome to my show. This is Patty McLean, and my show is called Exploring the Paranormal with Patty. And I was off the air I didn't realize I actually was off the air for more than a year. I'm busy writing books and publishing books and things like that. But today we're going to talk about a very interesting subject of UFOs and alien abduction. And I first became interested. Actually, I saw a ship in 1964, but I didn't trust myself because I had a hangover. And in 1994, I went to a conference, the International Transpersonal Conference in Killarney, Ireland, and I met a man named Don Ware, who is a director of the UFO Congress. And Don started telling me about seeing the UFOs over the White House in 1952 and the Gulf Breeze stories and everything. But my guests today are Joe Montaldo and Jason Williams of the International Community for Alien Research. So welcome on board, guys. Come on the show. I'm sure you have a lot more interesting things to say than I do.
Well, hello there. It's Jason Wilson. He's our North American.
Oh, I'm sorry, Jason Wilson, not William.
Oh, yeah. Don't feel bad about that. I've got like two of the most common names in North America, so it happens sometimes.
And he's the big boss. He's the big boss in North America. He handles Canada, Mexico, the United States itself. We got so much work going on these days that we've actually got to have people just to watch over areas just to make sure everybody else is doing what they're supposed to be doing.
Well, it's amazing to me. You know, I get those emails from the sightings and everything, and it's amazing to me how many sightings there are of ships and things lately.
Oh, trust me, I know about that. God, if ICAR tried to keep track of sightings, we would never have the chance to talk to any contactees or abductees because that would take up basically all of our time. I mean, that's one of the misconceptions that are out there about the entire field. There are a lot of people that think that UFOs and alien contact are, pretty much the rarest of the rare things, which, while I'll say they're not exactly quite commonplace, but they're a little bit more this kind of thing happens a little bit more than most people would expect.
Right.
Yeah, it really does. It really does. I mean, the amount of sightings are ridiculous these days. And honestly, and if you're listening out the audience, Jason and I will tell you this all the time. You can report a sighting to us, but we prefer that there was multiple witnesses or some good video or a good photograph, because frankly, we get a lot of this, oh, I seen a green light in the sky, I saw a red light in the sky, I saw a blue light. Well, that's great, especially if it happens to be in an area where there's abductions going on. But without something more tangible, there's nothing to even follow up on those. So yes, we have actually quite strict guidelines for what UFO cases we'll look into.
You know, quite honestly,
I think the abduction phenomena is real scary, actually. You know, I went to when I went to my first UFO Congress in Mesquite, Nevada, in the winter of '95. Travis Walton was one of the speakers, and he was abducted on my birthday, but a long time ago, and I think it'd been 20 years from him. It happened in '75, and I went in '95. And there were all kind of abductees that spoke on that conference. One was a government official from Norway or Finland or something, and she didn't look like the type to tell people, stories like that having been abducted since she was a child of 9. So I was just really blown away on my very first conference. I went, oh, God, I'm glad they didn't start picking me up.
Well, Travis is a good conference to attend. I mean, Travis is a good speaker. I've had him on the show a couple of times. He's really an eloquent speaker, and he's more convincing because of the way he speaks. But the man's passed away, Jason, 5 lie detectors now.
Yeah, I mean, Travis Walton. I mean, his case has been vetted just about as good as any case possibly can be.
Didn't they keep him like 3 or 4 or 5 days or something?
Yeah, we're working on. Last time I talked to Travis, I think they kept him for 5 days, if I remember right. And
I mean, that's really yeah.
But see,
scary.
Travis actually, when you break down his contact, he's actually describing 2 events. Him and I talked about this on the radio on my show UFO Undercover one night. He was I asked him, I said, well, Travis, don't you think maybe that they knew you were there and they were coming for you, which kind of freaked him out a little bit. And then I asked him, I said, well, tell me about the humans in the hangar, because he was describing what we would consider an everyday aircraft hangar, not a spacecraft, but just regular, on the ground aircraft hangar. And he got to talking about these humans in these encounter suits. So we're not exactly sure. We know the first part, at least the first few days, was definitely alien. But when him and I were talking about, he may have been handed off to the government the last day or 2. And it's real strange.
That's even scarier.
Yeah, and him and I talked about this, and it is something that the organization is looking into, but there's so little bit of evidence on this case, it's hard. And he did tell me, and we backed this up, the night of his abduction, there was actually a CIA agent in the woods, in the same woods. And now what does that mean? I don't know what it means, but that's a really odd coincidence. It just and really is.
And all that.
So when him and I talked about it, he did kind of get the sense that the ones that were in the hangar were humans like us, not aliens. So it was a very strange encounter. But it's not uncommon that the Grays from time to time hand you off to the government. So it's weird. What do you think,
Well,
Jason?
I want to hear the story today. How did you get into this work, Joe? We'll get you first, and Jason will be next. How did you even get into this?
This was weird for me. Oh, God, longer ago than I should admit to. About 30 years ago, 29 years ago, a friend of mine said, hey, I've been abducted by aliens. And, of course, I looked up at him like, yeah, sure you have, man.
Like he was out of his mind. Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
And then, so I said, no. You've not been abducted by aliens. You're crazy. And then I met someone else that had told me that. And I'm thinking, first off, why are these people telling me this? Then I got married, and lo and behold, my wife told me this. I'm like, okay. At this point, I'm kind of like, well, I know all 3 of these people. I know they're not crazy. I know they all have above normal IQs, that they excel at anything they do at work, whatever it may be. And I'm thinking, and none of them wanted to go public with this. I'm like, why in the hell are they telling me this? So I got to looking into it. By the way, at that point, I still thought they were crazy. For about 5 or 6 years after that, I really thought this was some kind of psychological thing that jumped from one to the next. Oh, that's cool. Let's do this. And then I realized, because I started talking to a lot more people, that it wasn't. I was like, well, wait a minute here. There's something really going on here. And then when I really started pushing to the envelope to see what it was, we started having weird stuff happen around the house. Weird things were going on all the time. So at that point, I realized this was a real event.
You opened
this was
a can of worms.
Yes, and at the time, I kind of regretted it. I don't now, but at the time, I kind of did. And but it was freaky. And now, 30 years later, yeah, I mean, see, for me and for most of the people in our organization, we're not looking for UFOs. We know ET's here. All we're trying to find out is what the hell do they want with us and what are they doing with the contactees. It's not an argument for us anymore, is ET here? We've seen enough evidence, or seen it ourselves, that we know this phenomenon is real. So at this point, it's about, more about what are you doing here? Why do you have boots on the ground in our country? Why are you taking our people? And what's going on with all this, and what kind of long-term program is this? Because it's, at least 30,000 years plus old right now. So, we're really more interested in this kind of.
That conference I met Don at in Killarney, Ireland, one of the key speakers was Dr. John Mack, and his book Abduction had just come out. So that was kind of my introduction to that subject at that conference, and then I heard Mack speak later too at some of the smaller UFO conferences. But I just think it's terribly intrusive. I do. Don't you think it's intrusive?
Yeah.
It is, definitely.
What about you, Jason? How did you get into this weird stuff?
Well, basically, as far as the alien abduction topic, or just aliens in general went, before I had a sighting of an interesting vehicle, I'll just put it like that. I'll explain here in a little bit. Back in 1997, I'd always considered. I looked at it this way. I figured it's a big universe out there. It would probably be a huge waste of space if we were the only sentient or intelligent life to ever be formed in such, a great vastness such as that. Well, I never really considered the alien topic. I figured, yeah, they're probably out there. They could be visiting this planet. I mean, it's human nature. We find something new and shiny. We got to get down there and explore it and take a look at it and try to figure it out too. I figure other races would more or less look at us and our planet the same way if they're out there. But I always considered it would be something that I would have to see something personally before I would, make that leap of faith and, come to any kind of conclusions about it. Well, it just so happened in 1998, I graduated from college in 97. This was my first semester at school. I was an engineering and computer science student at the University of Texas at the time, lived in a small little town called Oakwood, Texas, kind of in the middle of nowhere, like 400 and something people live here. Well, I'd gone off to college, spent a couple of weeks there, decided to come back for a weekend, and I ran into a couple of my old classmates. And we're hanging out outside at my buddy Lester's yard, and we look across the horizon. We're just kind of shooting the breeze, catching up on what everybody's been up to since the last time we'd seen each other. And we see what looks like an airplane flying out of place at first. So we notice it. We're just kind of watching it, and we notice this apparent airplane gets a little bit closer, and then it quits looking exactly like a plane. At first, there was a central light and two little lights off to the side, kind of like a plane. Nothing special. It just seemed out of place. But as this thing got lower and closer to us, you could tell that this thing was round. It went from a airplane-like pattern of lights to, now that this thing was a little bit closer and we could see it, it was a circular vehicle of some type. There was a large reddish central orb and a perfect circular perimeter of 8 or 9 tiny little white lights that would phase back and forth between white and a brilliant sapphire blue. And to make a long story short, this thing eventually flew directly overhead above us. I mean, at arm's length, this thing covered, most of the entire sky. I'm guesstimating that if it was 100 feet across, it couldn't have been more than 200 feet up, going more than about 15 or 20 miles an hour. And it just glided directly over myself and 2 of my friends. It passes directly above us. We turn around, we watch it. It continues on its line. It goes past where we are, about 200 yards or so, and it starts to make a slow banking turn. I mean, this thing was completely and totally silent. It seemed to break all the rules of aerodynamic flight as I understood them. This thing was going way too slow, and it was way too quiet to be any kind of, technology that we've employed here on this planet. So this thing goes past us, it takes a turn, and it starts to go off into the woods. Well, I certainly wasn't expecting this, and I was just in a state of complete and total awe and amazement after seeing, this was something that's not supposed to exist. I just saw the most brilliant thing I've ever seen in my life glide over me ever so gently, go past us and then take a left-hand turn. Well, it starts going, towards a patch of woods. And at this point, we were at my friend Lester's house. He got a little bit creeped out and just kind of went in the house. And he went in the house and he slammed the door. And me and my friend Joe, not this Joe Montaldo, but another Joe that I knew, we're outside. We just watched this thing. I'm like, dude, get in the car. So we hop in my car, and I drive Dukes of Hazzard for a little while. I know which way this thing's going. I know this little side road that, I can kind of cut through the woods on, little dirt road, bust out onto the right, onto a bigger farm road, and I would be able to see this thing. Well, I lost this thing for maybe 20, 30 seconds, certainly no longer than a minute. We had caught back up with it, and it was no longer the circular formation of lights anymore. In that less than a minute that we had lost this thing, it had apparently changed its form into, this thing was just now one big, gigantic, slightly pulsating ball of white light. Just this giant sphere of white light was now about a quarter mile ahead of me, traveling perpendicular to my path across this road. So I stopped the car, I turn it off in the middle of the street, and we're watching this thing go across. It's moving from right to left, going across my apparent horizon. I don't know, I'd have to guess maybe still about 150, 200 feet off of the ground. It's just going across the sky. It reaches a point, and it stops, and it just kind of hovers there for a while, getting brighter and a little bit dimmer, sort of pulsating a little bit. Then this thing starts descending slowly. And to make a quite long story short, well, it descends, it reaches a point where, this thing's close enough to the ground that I can see some of the outlines of the trees between me and this thing. And I'm about to lose sight of it. So I'm about to have to move the car so I can get a different vantage point on this thing. Well, at the exact point I went to start my car, nothing happened to my car, but this thing just disappeared, went out like it was like a switch had turned it off. It was there 1 second, and then click, it was gone.
They had a cloaking device.
What was weird is my car never started. It's like the entire electrical system of my car did not work. My headlights never came on. My dash lights never came on. My stereo didn't come on. Click the dome light, it didn't work. The only thing that would happen is that my car would sit there and it would crank the starter motor, but I wasn't getting any spark or any fuel or anything. The motor would turn. That was precisely it. So we pushed the car off the side of the road. We're about a mile out of this little town. We're thinking about going ahead and hoofing it back in because, I'm an engineering student at the time. I'm thinking electromagnetic pulse. My car is dead. Every transistor and it's fried. It's never going to start again. I'm about to walk, thinking that. We push the car off the road. I'm about to walk back into town. And then we notice 3 fighter jets swoop in from 3 different directions, moving low and fast. They reach this point ahead of us where, this thing last was, they fly a little spiral expanding search pattern for maybe 30, 45 seconds. Then they turn around and zip back to wherever they came from. And the only thing I can infer out of that is that somebody saw this thing on radar and they saw it disappear, and they must have thought that a plane had gone down or a helicopter had gone down, so they sent somebody to take a look, didn't find anything, turned around and went back. Well, after the jets came and disappeared, my car was just deader than a doornail. I'm thinking it's going to be dead forever. Well, I get back in it, I turn it on, I start it, and the car runs like nothing had ever happened before. Nothing had ever happened to it.
Wow.
And, pretty much that's what got me involved in this entire field.
I guess it would. So it changed your path rather abruptly, huh?
You can definitely say that. Well, and then, you know, after that, you know, I'd seen the most amazing thing I'd ever seen. I mean, this was, you know, something that definitely qualifies as paranormal. I mean, hell, if you want to look at it this way, it was an X-Files moment,
Right.
you know, pretty much. But this happened to me, and I wanted to look around and see what this thing was. So I get on the internet, and I mean, I must have read tens of thousands of sightings reports, but never came across anything precisely like what I had seen. And that got me on to some of to people that had claimed that they were alien abductees and contactees. I mean, I didn't even want to consider the fact, well, you know, especially since I believe I had just seen, you know, one of their vehicles. I certainly didn't want the abduction phenomenon to be true because, you know, they very well might have gotten me. But it wasn't until I started talking to, you know, certain contactees out there that, you know, some of these people who claim that they were actually alien and had alien contact, these were the only people out there that had seen something in the sky that was consistent with what I had seen.
Oh, I see.
You know, and from that point on, you know, I wanted to debunk the whole abduction theory. You know, I did not want this to be true. I wanted these people to be completely and totally full of crap. But you know what? It took a little bit of time, but I've come to the conclusion that, you know, something is happening to me and these other people out there. And like Joe had mentioned earlier, I mean, you know, I had looked on the internet and tried to find a bunch of things like that. You know, I find some of the typical, you know, abduction and alien contact stories. And I hear weird things like somebody says that they're the chosen one that, you know, has been picked by contact by the Galactic Federation Council of 12 or something like that. And that, you know, there are
ego
space
stuff,
brothers.
little ego going on there.
Yeah, and you know, I guess the point I'm trying to make here is what you hear from the average contactee out there on the street that isn't trying to go public or isn't trying to make a buck or isn't trying to promote some kind of dogma. It's vastly different than a lot of the information that you find out there in the field, and that's one of the reasons that ICAR exists. I mean, we're more or less a republic of independent researchers and experiencers that have come together to try to, you know, get our case out there. And quite honestly, one of the main reasons I'm involved in this is we're trying to find other people that have been involved in this phenomenon. I mean, everybody's a jigsaw puzzle piece. I mean, once we can work a little bit of the mosaic together, maybe we'll come down to some answers.
Well, I'm a psychic, and I've had out-of-body experiences, you know, and seen spirits and heard spirits and all that kind of thing. And when I started going to the UFO conferences back in 94, 95, some of the related stories sounded like astral to me, sounded like interdimensional beings, maybe, you know, walking through walls and that kind of thing. That's kind of like on the astral plane. But are some of these people like extraterrestrials, and some of them are from the inner dimensions?
Well, the Greys have the ability to be both.
The Greys can come and go with the dimensions, huh?
Yeah, they actually, when they take
some of it
contact,
sounds very astral plane to me. That it's just like the things we do in our dreams when we're in the astral body and passing through walls and stuff like that. Our astral body would pass through a wall. You know, maybe they can change the molecular structure of our physical body to do it too. I don't know.
A lot of that stuff we consider to be non-physical abductions. See, the Greys especially, they have the ability to put you in rooms you can't tell if it's real or not. They can actually take your consciousness and the essence of what you are and upload it into their computer system, and then actually put you where we would consider a hologram room or something. But it's often
this is getting weirder and weirder.
Yeah, none of it is actually real. That's why in the metaphysics fields, we find a good chunk of people who are in those fields actually turn out to be contactees, because it's one of the reasons they're drawn to those fields. They're looking for answers in this. But a lot of what a lot of people consider to be astral plane and a lot of things is what we consider a non-physical abduction. And there's a lot of that. I mean, there's physical abductions, actually several forms of abductions, but the non-physical abductions, every contactee we've ever talked to will tell you that you can't tell a difference between if you're there or not. The only reason they know they're not there physically is because they can actually see their body when they're leaving. So they know they're not physically there. It's a conscious download. It's like the downloads when they download information into your head. There's a lot goes on, a lot more than most people will ever even realize in this particular subject matter, but they really do have the ability to basically take you out of time and space. We have contactees that come back with like 3 weeks worth of hair on their legs or their face. They've been gone for 3 weeks, but as far as anybody in their family is concerned, they went to bed at midnight. Now it's the morning, they're home. They've just all of a sudden got all this extra hair growth and stuff. Now, when you regress them, and you'll find out there's 2 or 3 weeks worth of memories there. They actually physically took them out of our time and space and put them back at the same time. It's just, you know, the body was physically gone that long. But in that realm, not in this one. It's a strange thing. And really, we think the dimensional stuff is directly related to the researchers, because there used to be missing time all over the place. I mean, that's actually one of the founding things for an abduction case was missing time. That's not true anymore. Today, there's a lot more. It's a lot more sophisticated, and there's a lot more to look into when you're trying to find out if someone's been taken or not, because they do looped memories where they use your own memories against you. They take you out of physical time and space, so there's no missing time anymore. There's just little weird things that let you know that something happened. It's a strange thing.
Well,
Patty, you had a good point too about you know, a lot of the. Well, I'll just put it this way. As far as psychic abilities, you know, I mean, starting with empathy, I mean, even going up to astral projection or remote viewing and things like that.
Right.
You know, I'll just put it this way. I don't know a single contactee out there or an abductee out there that isn't at least empathic. I mean, quite honestly, a lot of these abilities that you had alluded to are honestly possessed by a lot of the contactees. I mean,
well,
myself,
I've
certainly had experiences with psychic phenomenon and the like. I won't exactly go into them right here because I take up the rest of your show with that. That's kind of almost another topic. But I kind of look at it this way: if certain humans have the ability, maybe all of us have it, but we don't know how to tap into it. You know, that's another one of those interesting little conundrums out there. But if we've got the ability to remote view, you know, to astrally project ourselves, you know, either physically or mentally into other locations, I mean, I just have to look at it this way. Those are some tools that are at our disposal. I mean, some of these extraterrestrial beings and races, I mean, for all we know, they're billions and billions of years older than we are. And they appear to possess the same psychic phenomenon and abilities that a lot of humans do. Only they've been doing it a whole hell of a lot longer than we have. So,
right.
I mean, in that case, I think it would make perfect sense for them to use those tools that they have such a mastery of. I mean, you know, if you have a piece of information to convey to somebody here on Earth and you're on a different star system or a different dimension altogether, I mean, what would be more economical and efficient? To actually jump over with the vehicle into our realm to convey some information to us, or to simply, you know, just use psychic abilities to do it?
Well, I think everyone's psychic. I mean, I've been a professional clairvoyant for 46 years. So I've been doing this for a very long time. You know, and I had remote viewing experiences. I was, at one point, I met Dale Graff, who was the head of Project Stargate, and I didn't realize he was trying to recruit me to be a remote viewer. But
interesting.
Yeah, but we were meeting at conferences and listening to people like Deepak Chopra and, you know, the consciousness people. And one night he mentioned he had a wife at dinner. I know he didn't have a ring on, and I thought, what is he taking me out for, you know? And he said, well, have you ever had any experience with remote viewing? And it was when I was at my first UFO Congress, and I think it was February of 1995, it came out on the TV that he was the head of the government's remote viewing project. And I thought that's why he was after me. He wanted me to help be a psychic spy. And I'd be a lousy psychic spy, you know. But I didn't realize, you know, and then I had a holistic center in Camden, Maine for a couple of years, and Dale came up and taught a class on dreams for me, and Don Ware came up and taught a UFO weekend for me. But it was like very interesting that he was, and he asked me if I'd remote viewed at the time, and I actually didn't realize that I actually had remote viewed. And that's one of the stories that's in my memoir called Cosmic Conspiracy, Psychic to the Rich and Famous, and it's on Kindle, and it's in Barnes & Noble and Amazon and everything. But, I did have a remote viewing experience years ago, but I won't relate that now. But, and I don't have any conscious memory of being abducted. But where do you think most of these abductors come from? Who are they?
Actually, Patty,
group?
Well, I've got a question to ask you regarding remote viewing, because you're probably a little bit more of an expert or a little bit more aware of that particular field than I am. I mean, I believe that I've experienced remote viewing. I didn't do it consciously. It's almost like I was drawn into observing things. And anybody that's listening to your show, anybody that has had alien contact can probably relate to this experience, and I want to ask your opinion on it. All right, we've noticed with contactees that, I mean, things seem to happen in batches. I mean, here at ICAR, I mean, we've talked to literally thousands of people that have either had or claim to have had extraterrestrial contact. And the way I kind of keep tabs of things is I've got a core sample group, I call them my usual suspects, of about 24 people or so. And, I just have them I'll check in with them, see how everything's going, or if they sense that something's, a little bit out of the ordinary, I ask for them to report these incidents to me. And this is an extremely common incident, and I've had this experience myself. All right, you're lying in bed, you're trying to go to sleep, you start to phase off, you start to feel yourself drifting away, but you get yourself caught in that twilight between consciousness and something else. You're aware of yourself lying in bed, yet you start to phase into another scene that, is more or less happening in front of your face. And
right.
One very common instance is somebody will be lying there, and it's like they'll see snippets of somebody. It just seems like some random person, doing some random thing in their daily life. It's like you'll watch this person for a couple of seconds and you'll like fade off, and then the next thing,
they're having a clairvoyance. That's
Yeah,
clairvoyance.
you're looking at somebody else. I mean, it's almost
right.
as if, I mean, I don't necessarily want to blame extraterrestrials, but I mean, all of these people during the exact same time frame are having these similar experiences. And, I imagine that's sort of what remote viewing is kind of like, even though these people aren't doing it intentionally.
Well, what I did was intentional. I had been taking meditation classes with an astrologer friend who unfortunately ended up being one of the 900 victims in Jonestown. And but she was teaching me what to do, what they call rise in the planes through the different planetary dimensions of consciousness. And she was dating a man she said was a double agent. Okay. And she hadn't heard from Dennis for some time, and he hadn't written to her. I was living in California at the time, and she wanted me to go to the Uranus level of consciousness and contact Dennis. And I said, I can do that? And she said, yes, of course you can. She said, your chakras are more open than anyone else I've ever met. So I just trusted her. She wanted Dennis to get in touch. She said, tell him to get in touch with me immediately. So I'm sitting on my king-size bed and with my legs crossed, going into a meditative state, and I raise up into what I consider to be the Uranus level of consciousness, and I kind of sense myself to be it's dark where I am, and I sense myself to be, I can smell salt air, that it's a seaport, and I get the feeling of the south of France. And I'm a Scorpio, I'm pretty willful anyway, and I send a mental message I figure I must have contacted Dennis, and I said, you must write to Tish immediately. And it was all mental. I didn't say anything out loud or anything. And then when I felt like I'd accomplished that, I came back down through the planes back into my body. So I called Tish up and I said, well, I contacted him and I feel like he's in France and he's in a sea town. 4 days later, she got a letter, and it was at 3 a.m., Saint-Tropez, France. And Dennis said, Dear Tish, for some odd reason, I feel compelled to sit down and write you a letter. Now, the government would have loved me, right? I mean, I could have been a Russian, spied on the Russians or something. But it was like, I was floored. I was floored because when I was 19 and 24, I had plays produced. I write novels, I write plays, I write screenplays. I have a very active imagination. And it's just, of course, that's the way I've always felt about my psychic readings. I'm just making something up and then somebody calls me and tells me it happened. But I mean, that's the sense I had. But I mean, I actually imposed my will on this guy I'd never met and woke him up and he wrote a letter. So that was my remote viewing experience.
Well, I'd say that certainly
Mine was consciously directed.
Well, I'd say that certainly falls outside of the realms of random coincidence, especially with specifics and details like that.
Right. Now, but when that little twilight place when you're falling to sleep and you're between waking and sleeping, whenever
weird things happen there.
Well, but whenever a friend of mine dies, that's where I see them immediately. I've lost like 5 people in the last 3 years. That's what happens when you're 75 years old. People start dying. And it's always in that place between that I'm gone to the astral plane or something, and I see them young and smiling and happy on the other side. So that's my experiences often with that twilight zone. Not an ET experience, but a disincarnate spirit over there.
Yeah, and I believe that they can use these same abilities, just as we can. And I mean, my God, if they've been doing this a billion years longer than we have, who knows what kinds of little tricks and deals they can teach us. And that's actually
and
one
what
of the
is
other
their life what is their life expectancy? Do they go for hundreds of years or anything, like Methuselah or something?
That's a good question. I mean, a lot of people assume, but honestly, I haven't had them sit down and give me, that specific answer. So I don't think I can really answer for them on that one. I mean,
where do most of them come from? Do you know? You talk about the reptilians and everything. You hear a lot about the reptilians at the UFO conferences. You think most of these are with the Greys and all that are the reptilians? I don't know too much about the different races of the aliens.
Well, I was going to say something. I lost my voice there. Go ahead, Jason.
Oh, all right. Well, basically, as far as contact goes, I mean, there are numerous races out there, but I call them the big 3. You've got a type of course, you've got the Greys, you've got the reptilians, and you've got a very humanoid type of alien. Some people call them humans, but I don't think they're quite exactly related to us. Not 100%. There might be some relation there, but I don't know. It goes into some of the abduction criteria, but there are a number of physical differences between us and these very humanoid beings. And as far as personalities and mental abilities go, I mean, there's some vast differences between us and them too. But, that's basically what you've got. You've got the Greys, you've got the reptilians, and you've got these very human aliens. And I'm sure Joe can elaborate on the differences between,
I've heard there's 150 different types that have come to this planet. That's what I heard.
Well, that may be true, but that's something that, I can't exactly vary. I mean, just, as far as the Greys go, I mean, there's more flavors of Greys than Baskin Robbins has ice cream. I mean, as far as the Greys go, just for example, you've got everything from the small worker Greys to the taller kind of, I don't know, some people consider them overlords or the ones that are in charge. I mean, there are a myriad of different, physical differences. I mean, just the colors. I mean, gray. I mean, the term gray doesn't even adequately describe, this entire subset of beings. I mean, they have been everything from brown to blue to green to translucent white. I mean, it's like, I don't know if these are like, you know, different subtypes or different races or like, you know, possibly different, you know, adaptations for living on different environments. But I mean, with the Greys and the reptilians, I mean, there are a myriad number of subspecies within the general group.
Do we know what planet they come from?
The reptilians are from here. They're
They're
native.
from they're the ones that live on our planet. Do they live inside the planet? Do they live under the ocean?
More than likely, what happened is somewhere whenever 60, 70 million years ago, whenever the disaster happened in our solar system, not just on Earth but on Venus and Mars as well, they probably left for a while. You know, we know about the draconians. We know there's 3 or 4 colonies out there. We know there's a colony back on Earth now. We know the reptilians are probably the closest related to us. We also know we got a reptilian section in our brain, but they got 5 fingers, 5 toes. They're basically built like us. Even their emotional seems to be like us, except they live a lot longer and they have genetic memory, which gives them a big advantage over us. But like Jason was saying, with the Greys, I mean, the Greys, you know, you got the 3 foot, the 4, 5 foot, the 6, 7 foot, and they really, because a lot of them use that blue plasma for food, it tends to change the color of their skin. Sometimes they'll look like a cobalt blue, sometimes they'll look translucent, and a whole host of colors in between. That's why you get so many descriptions. But when you hear people talk about how many alien races visit, this is real easy. There's not a lot, because there's not that many types of spacecraft visiting the planet. When you start looking at what's actually being seen, you know, the large triangles, as far as big ships go, the large triangles, the big, huge rectangular shaped or tube-shaped ships, those are big, miles across and stuff. There's only 3 or 4 types of those. Really, when you hear the Greys, most of the time you hear them either talking about the saucers or those little egg-type probe things they got. Same thing with the humans, you know, the little black triangles, the other black triangles, and they use a couple of different props, from an orb-shaped one to a dish-shaped one to a egg-shaped one, and actually even a diamond-shaped one. So there's several smaller, like shuttlecrafts, but there's not really very much in the way of mid-craft or large craft. Anything that was traveling across the cosmos, you know, would be vastly different from race to race to race, and you're just not seeing that. What you're really seeing is about 6 major visitations to this planet, and from what we understand about the Greys, you can't even come here unless you have their permission. And they're just not into it. They only came because of the reptilians and the humans were going to fight, get in a damn war over us 6,000 or 10,000, whatever, how many ever years ago it was, when you know, Sumerians get in a great deal about this. The Sumerians
what
talk about
what about Zachariah Sitchin? I was going to say, are the Greys the one who engineered us to be slaves to begin with?
Actually, the humans are the ones that created us as slave race. The Sumerians get into this in great detail. So do the Egyptians. There was a race that came here. They built these 2 great white dome cities. They couldn't breathe the atmosphere of this planet, so they created a race, not us. They created a race like themselves to rule over the planet. That race created what the Sumerians call the 7 creations of man, with the last creation looking just like we do today, but they weren't really sentient in the fact that, you know, they didn't ask why they had to do stuff. They said, the Sumerians talk about this, they said the reptilians used to come in, steal their women, rape their women, and bring them back. Those women would have children. They said those children were vastly different from the children that came before, meaning that they wanted to know why they had to plow the field. They were the ones that engineered the revolution. They became the sentient. They became us, the race that's here today. That's the one with the reptilian section in its brain. That's us. They gave us our consciousness. They're the ones that made us get up and rebel against the human slave race in here. And then since then, the Greys came and got involved for a couple of reasons. One, the reptilians and humans were about to get into it over the planet, because the reptilians consider this to be their world, and they consider the humans coming here to be basically invaders. Now, since we share DNA with them, they're not going to wipe us out because we're like cousins to them. You know, and they're funny about family, much more than the other 2 races are. But they you know, the reptilians directly they directly intervened on our behalf. See, everybody wants to paint them like Zachariah wants to paint them as bad guys, but that's not true. If you look at history, they've intervened on mankind's behalf many times. Even in the Christian of Adam and Eve, it's the serpent that gives Eve the apple of knowledge. She becomes self-aware. She's no longer standing naked in the world because she realized, oh hell, I'm standing naked in the world. Let me put some damn clothes on. She became a self-aware species at the time. This story dates back to the earliest time in our creation all the way into present day. It permeates into every culture. So we know there's something to it, and we know that the reptilians and the humans are probably what created us today. And then the Greys getting involved, and this is what worries me more than anything else. if it is true that we are part human, part reptilian, and then the Greys intervened and actually added their DNA, we're a very special, very unique species.
Well, we know we're very special.
So we have to be very careful there, because they may see an outcome long term that they may not like or they may like. So I really think they're sitting here watching us now. I got to say that when we test telepaths, it's not in the general population. I know a lot of people feel that way, but and this is the easiest thing to do. Go get the card test. Go to your local mall. Set the cards up at the table and start having people go through your mall and have them take the test. You're going to find that about 85% of them won't even get 50-50, which they should, because they're playing the odds. Won't even get 50-50. There is no psychic ability in them at all. But it's one of the reasons that the aliens abduct the people they abduct. Those are the ones most closely related to them. Those are the ones with the psychic abilities, empathic, telepathic. And I got to be honest with you, we don't even look at a contactee unless they're empathic. And most of the contactees we meet are very telepathic and extremely empathic. It's like one of the criteria we expect to see. It's a much different thing than it was 20 years ago. We've learned so much from so many contactees, and we have so many projects going on, and they're ongoing. I mean, some of these projects, like the blood type, I think it's up around 4,500 now. Contactees that have taken them. I think the Gray questionnaire is topping somewhere at 15 to 2,000 people range now. I know we got other new projects going on. I'll get Jason to tell you about that, but our Oregon State Director is working on a new project right now they're getting ready to release. And it's what makes us, it sets us apart from everybody else, because we're no longer guessing. We've actually got enough people and enough data that we can actually come to some hard conclusions based on all the contactees we have in the organization. I think it's like 17,500 now, and I think the membership probably, last time I counted, we were like at 31 or 32, but I imagine since then we've been doing a lot of radio and stuff, probably up quite a bit from there. Our goal is by summer of this year, or summer of next year, to be over 50,000 members strong, which makes us by far the largest UFO organization. We are the largest legitimate UFO organization.
Do you have conferences too?
No, we want to. We just haven't had time to work it out. We want to do one out of Atlanta because we got some friends up there with the Marriott that want to help us out. And then we've been talking about doing some mini conferences here and there. Now, I have been talking with some people about doing one in Arkansas and one in Tennessee at Memphis. But man, my problem is just like Jason says, our time is so finite these days. Between the radio, between my regular career, because I own a construction company in New Orleans, between that, the radio station, and the International Community for Alien Research, I have next to zero free time. So it's just getting all the people.
You're a pretty busy fellow, huh?
Yeah, it's just getting all the key people. And this year is going to settle down a little bit. The organization's kind of getting itself a little better reorganized, so we'll all start seeing a little bit more time. And we do have a lot of friends that want us to get into this. So sooner or later, I mean, we were trying to get one going this year, just didn't seem to want to cooperate. But I imagine we'll have one going next year. We might even get one, a little mini one going off by the end of the year, but it's tough.
Yeah. Well, there's someone in the chat room named Northern Light. She's with me almost every week. She says Nobel Prize winner Francis Crick, who discovered the double helix DNA, launched a theory that we were seeded by aliens from outer space. And of course, he was ignored by the establishment. Isn't that interesting? Do you know about that?
They definitely
Francis
do
Crick,
not.
you know about that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, they definitely do not want us to be thinking about, hey, they don't want anything to do with aliens. They don't even want to even remotely go there. I mean, it's just not even something they want to do.
I mean, anybody that follows science has heard of Watson and Crick, and the fact that that's really interesting. Northern Lights. I'd heard some rumors about that theory, but I haven't been able to find anything that would confirm that. But as for being ignored by the establishment, hey, that happens each and every single day. I mean, I'm involved in the alien abduction research field, and if you want to talk about being ignored by the establishment, well, yeah, it happens.
Where do the reptilians do they mix with us? Do they live in our cities, or do they live separate from us?
I don't think any of the aliens are really walking amongst us. I mean, maybe some hybrids out there. There's quite a few types of hybrids out there, but
I heard we'd been infiltrated in order to help lift consciousness on the planet.
But well, it could be, but it's the thing of it is see, that's another problem. You have to judge all these aliens by their actions, and their actions are not honorable. If you know, you can go with what people say, but if you
Which
actually
ones are honorable and which ones aren't?
none of them, none of them are visiting the planet are honorable because none of them ask before they take you. Even though they may have good intentions.
I mean, I'd kick them in the slats myself.
Well, but what I'm saying is, even though
many
aliens,
contactees would like to, trust me.
Oh yeah, well, I'm sure quite a few have tried actually, but I mean, I've even known people to pick up guns and other sticks and boards and stuff, but it's not going to help. I mean, there's not much you can do to them. But the thing of it is even with them trying to help us, because they do try to help in some areas, bottom line is they came to this planet uninvited. All of them. It doesn't matter what race you're talking about. They came to this planet uninvited, and it started taking citizens without asking. So, you know, in today's society, that's an act of war. Okay, we would go to war over a country that did that to our citizens, especially if they were doing experiments. So even though they are honorable in some aspects, the fact that they don't treat us as equals, and they don't even think we're even near equals, by the way, really says a lot about them. I mean, let me put it another way. If they had to kill a few of us to achieve what they were doing, they wouldn't lose any sleep over it. And these beings are enlightened and much more advanced than we are, both physically and mentally. And the funny part is, with the Greys especially, you know, contactees ask me all the time, if I pray to Jesus, will it stop an abduction? And I said, you might think it did, but in reality, it probably didn't. But a lot of times the Greys are quite vicious about that. You know, one girl, she was praying to Jesus. They actually took her eyes out and turned them around so she could see herself, and then told her, now get your God to fix this. So, you know, the Greys also have a sense of humor as well. But the thing about it is they look at the universe much differently than we do. You know, we're on a grand scheme of advancement, we're amoebas. And you know, the Greys are probably
we're very primitive. All you have to do is read the news to see what a primitive planet we live on.
Yeah, amen to that.
Gangs
I'm just
and
looking
killing
at the
and murders and robbery and wars and rumors of wars and everything else. It's a very barbaric, primitive planet. And we have astrological aspects this year through 2015 that are very, very scary.
Did you see that? Really,
well, you know, that might be one of the reasons that you know, they treat us the way that they treat us. Because with a lot of contactees, all right, I'll just put it this way. About a dozen years ago or so, I know, well, this is kind of how it worked out. You know, our little, one of the core groups of contactees that we work with, and that seems to be the way it organizes itself. People sort of form little circles and get to know each other and almost become working groups. And whether these people are aware of it or not, they all get abducted and also have non-physical contact experiences at precisely the same time. And one of the first times I noticed this was a group of about a half a dozen contactees all experienced the exact same dream. I mean, it's almost as if everybody's consciousness was taken and put into some kind of group training scenario. And I don't really want to go into it too much because that would take up the rest of our time too, but I'll just say that in these group training scenarios, people seem to be working together and, you know, actively practicing with certain psychic abilities that these people weren't even aware that they had. I mean, it's almost as if these extraterrestrials are taking people and somehow teaching them how to use their talents and utilize their psychic abilities a little bit better. But they're not letting us remember most of these activities and most of these things in real life. Because, I mean, as you said, imagine the advantage that a person that was fully aware and fully unlocked, you know, I mean, just imagine if a politician had these psychic abilities. Do you know how much they would twist those and manipulate everybody else to kind of fall in line with them? Well, that's true.
There are some good people out there too, you know.
There are, but we've all got to watch out for the bad ones. The whole world isn't going to hell in a handbasket, so, you know. What about reincarnation? Does that figure into any of this theory that you have with the other races? Are they reincarnated?
Well, I know they live so long that, you know, that's an interesting question because, like the Greys, you know, they abducting the Grey that's abducting you today is probably the Grey that abducted your great grandmother because they live so long. So they actually kind of, you know, are with families that are progressing through. So if reincarnation is real, the graves are actually watching humans as they do it. For them, it's kind of interesting because they get to stay with us so long, with one family line for so long. But I tell this to people all the time because, a lot of people write to me and tell me how good the aliens are and they love us and they're here to enlighten our species and stuff. If that was true, because they've been here at least 30,000 or more years, we would be the most enlightened species in the universe, but we're not. We're at each other's throats. So it shows right there, either they're causing the problems or they're not willing to intervene on our behalf. Because it's easy. I mean, come on, let's be honest. If the alien showed up tomorrow in mass, this planet would unite like nothing we've ever seen before. I mean, we'd become one big happy family because now we would be humans against the rest of the universe. Stuff like black and white and all this other stuff would just kind of fade away because now we got somebody else to worry about. So we would become, instead of Americans or Russians, we would be humans. We'd be Earthlings, and we'd be a much different world. But they're not even willing to do that. So you got to wonder what's really going on here. And I tell people this to be cautious because they're here for their agenda. And, humans are egotistical, so we always have to make things about us. But a lot of what's going on here is not about us. It's about them. And people need to remember that. And it's not so much that they're here to wipe us out or anything else, because this is a true statement here. If they were here to conquer the planet, they would have done it thousands of years ago when there was hardly nobody here. If they were here to unite and help the planet, they would have done it 1,000 years ago when it would have been easier, when there was very few people on the planet. You could have united it quite easily and gave us the technology and kept us united. They didn't do either one of those scenarios, which suggests they're here for their own agendas and to move forward as we move forward, but they're not willing to intervene on man's behalf. I mean, come on. They could easily fix the problem in the Middle East or in China or any of those things. They're not willing to go there at all.
Are they going to try to keep us out of nuclear war or something like that?
Nope. I don't. For them, they don't even care. If we wipe the whole planet out, it's not even a big deal for them. They have the technology to clean the planet up pretty much with no time at all. So they're not even worried about that. Remember, you always hear people say, "Oh, we're going to kill the planet." No, we're not. The planet will be here long after man's gone at the rate we're going. You're not going to kill Earth. You might do it some damage, but it will recuperate. I mean, come on. This is the third evolution of life on this planet, or fourth. There's been 3 great extinctions prior to us. So this isn't even a big deal for Earth. It's got at least 3 billion years before the sun goes red giant. So it's got plenty of time to start over. So I tell you all the time, careful there.
What about what about ETs working with NASA and the space program and all that?
Oh no, they're not.
You think that's true?
No, they're not even interested in that little raggedy space program.
No, as far as NASA goes, I mean, we're still basically using World War II technology. I mean, everything we basically owe the entire space program to Werner von Braun and the Nazi V2 rocket ballistic missile project. Right. But I'd like to say that if extraterrestrials were involved with NASA, I mean, we'd have. Well, of course, they say that there are certain non-official branches of the government that do, or possibly not even the government, of some earthly entity that has like these advanced technologies. But I mean, I don't think we'd still be riding, basically guided Roman candles and bombs into space if we had some alien technology. And I wanted to go back to the reincarnation question that you asked, which is a really good one.
Yes.
I mean, I can't answer definitively as to, the whole reincarnation question, and especially concerning these extraterrestrials. But I will say this, though. I know an awful lot, a large number of contactees that they do claim that they have some memories of some type of past life that was not lived on this planet and, wasn't even lived in human form. I mean, there is
I know people of that. I've remembered about 150 lifetimes, parts of them, some of them very vividly, and both as a man and a woman in different races, different religions, and everything else. But my memories have all been here. But I know of other people who remember of being in other systems, other star systems.
I've had some experiences like that too myself. They come in the form of dreams, really interesting dreams, but I mean, they certainly fit with a past life or a snippet of an existence from some other place or some other time. Now, another aspect that you have to consider regarding reincarnation is, of course, there's always that old saying that any technology that's sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic. I mean, for all we know, these extraterrestrials may be able to save somebody's consciousness and the essence of who they are, record it somewhere to a computer program and drop that off into a new body once the old one starts to wear out. I mean, the reincarnation thing kind of becomes a little bit iffy if you've got technology that can more or less, replicate essentially the same thing.
What about the baby hybrid program that they talked about back in the 90s, that when I was going to conference?
The hybrids are interesting. Here's something for all your listeners to think about. And this always gets everybody really confused, and I love doing this. Okay, you got the Greys got a hybrid program going on, right? You got the humans got a hybrid program going on, and you got the reptilians have a hybrid program going on. So let's say, okay, so now you've got children that are alive on a planet that are hybrids that are left here. In other words, that they're close enough to us that they could go back with their real family. They didn't have to stay on board the ship, but they're still technically hybrids. So that one marries a reptilian hybrid, and they have children. So now you've got a gray reptilian human hybrid. Now that one marries a human aliens hybrid, and they have children. So now you've got a human reptilian gray. Now it marries back to another gray hybrid, and they have children. Every time this happens, they're creating a new species every time. So what they've effectively done is they have entered a new section into our DNA that, frankly, you can start to see there's starting to become a gap in society. If you're watching what's going on in our country right now, there seems to be half the country seems to be quite well educated and quite intelligent, and the other half of the country seems to be completely moronic. Like they've just become sheeples and they just follow without any real question at all. It's kind of scary to watch, actually. But you're starting to see a split in society. And just recently, the government, about 2 years ago or 4 years ago, when Bush was still president, they had done a survey, and they found out about 20%, 15 to 20% of the children they were testing between the ages 5 and 15 had above normal IQs, which is quite a bit up from past studies. It also happens to fit about what we think the population of abductees are, around 15%. So it's really interesting to see these things starting to correlate. And it's like the blood type thing. No one can explain why South America and Central America are 99.9% O blood, and why the majority of contactees are Rh negative, when Rh negative only makes up 15% of the world's population. See, we're actually finding patterns now. Yeah, we're really seeing things. The organization has got into some stuff now that really makes a difference at the way you look at this and the way you understand what's really going on here. Because a lot of what we considered to be paranormal or metaphysical or new age has turned out to be part of the contact scenario. And it's like a UFO. For us, it's a little different. People say everybody sees UFOs. That's not true. We'll use Mexico
not everybody sees them. I only saw them once.
but what the point is, you can be in New York City, and there'll be a UFO sitting over the city. Now, there's 8 million people in New York City. Maybe a million, maybe half, maybe a quarter, whatever. That is probably the amount of contactees that are in that city. Mexico City, that UFO hovered over that city for 24 hours. The mayor seen it, the police chief seen it, all kind of people seen it. Over 1 million people reported seeing it. But there's 22 million people in Mexico City. Why didn't the other 21 million see it? See, we learned something early on. ET ships can stay invisible. They don't ever have to show themselves, ever. So if you're seeing them, there's actually a reason why you're seeing them. They're not showing themselves randomly. There's a reason why they're seeing them. We found out with in the old days you used to hear them talk about, oh, I seen a deer or an owl or whatever standing on the road or sitting on my windowsill, and people used to think that was cover memories. That's not. It's trigger memory. That's to let you know something just happened. Well, in recent times, most of the UFO sightings, when people see a UFO, it's either at the time they're being picked up or put back. And ETs were allowing you to see that so that you know something just happened. That's what we think most of them are. It's not that I don't think a random person might see one if they happen to be around when this is going on, but really in general, it seems like probably the overall majority, 95%, 99% of everybody who sees a UFO turns out to be a contactee or an abductee.
Do you think that was true in the case of the Phoenix Lights? When they have
it's because the
Phoenix Lights and they have video on it and everything.
Yeah, but that I'm not sure what that is. I'm not sure if that was actually extraterrestrial. It's like Stevensville. That was not extraterrestrial. That was terrestrial. That was another big craft, but it had rivets and stuff on it. That's a terrestrial craft. We know the government has some big stuff they're flying around, and we know they're working on some other big projects. And frankly, the videotape I've seen of the Phoenix Lights just isn't convincing. You can't really see anything. It's lights, and you don't know if it's single aircraft or if it's a group of aircraft together or if it's something else. If it's something big, because I know some people told me they were underneath it and they could still see stars, which means you could see through it. And I'm not thinking, most of the time when you hear people say they look up, whatever they're looking at blots out the stars, even though it's black, it still blots out the stars. You can't see the stars. So that was kind of a leery thing for me when I heard that. We take this really serious, and we do hardcore investigations and stuff. We're not like MUFON and then where, oh yeah, well, it's probably extraterrestrial craft based on what they said Stevensville was, and we found out. First off, it had rivets on the craft. There was chase planes there. This is typical U.S. military stuff. The way when we have top secret aircraft flying, we fly chase planes with them. Riveted aircraft. I have never ever in my 30 years of doing research heard of a UFO with rivets on it ever. It just doesn't happen that way. You're not going to have a ship that can cross interstellar space that's got rivets in it. It won't be able to withstand the pressures. We find out that a lot of these turn out to be extra. I mean, us, not anything else. So you got to be leery. And with Phoenix, I've talked to a lot of people out there. Bruce McAbee and I had several discussions about this. And Lynn Kitai and I had several discussions. I got friends that live in Phoenix. We've had several discussions about it. And they tell me there was something there, but even they're not sure if this was what kind of object this actually was, because you could not get any real sense of shape. And if it was as big as the light spread was, which would have been a couple of miles across, you should have been able, when it crossed over the city, it should have blocked out all the light above it if it was actually a physical craft. And that's not what people reported. So actually, since there was a moon out that night, it should actually even cast a shadow where the moon was, and it didn't. See, like I said, we really investigate stuff. We don't go say we do. We just actually do. And we've rewritten cases over the years, like the Betty and Boring Hill case, and the Allagash case. Not the Allagash case, the Kecksburg case. I'd bet you money Kecksburg was also some type of military craft. The way it was just coincidental that they described this acorn-sized craft about the size of a semi-truck, and the Russians described losing an acorn-sized craft in space about the size of a semi-rig. So those things are just too coincidental. You have to take them for what they are. The Russians lost a probe. We picked it up, and we didn't want to tell anybody what it was, so we blamed it on ET. There's several times the government has used ET to hide stuff, because it's, when you hear ET, you think, oh, well, they're crazy. We're not, and they're not going. Nobody's even going to look any further than that. They're just not going to. So it gets used a lot. But I don't want people to get the wrong idea either. A lot of what's flying around out there is ET. It's just usually you're not going to see them.
Well, where are their bases? Where are their bases? You guys must know, right?
Well, I'm sure there's one or two on the planet. There's probably one.
You think they're inside a mountain or under
a
lake?
I'm glad you brought that up. I was talking with my French director about this a while back. There's a mountain in France where, what is it, like 50 or 60,000 people are at the base of this mountain. They done created a little town down there waiting for ET to come out of the mountain.
Oh,
I don't know. Is that part of that Riel group, Jason?
No, I don't think that's tied to the Raelians. The Raelians are kind of a little bit different. But, Patty, actually the hybrid question, it may very well be possible that to some degree, everybody on this planet, every normal human as we consider them, might be a hybrid themselves. Because I've got this theory that, you got mitochondrial DNA. Mitochondrial DNA mutates at a fairly stable rate. So, it's basically a good time marker. It's a pretty good time marker. And based on some research into mitochondrial DNA and some of its mutations, it's pretty much hard science. There was a genetic bottleneck that happened in the human race between 80 to 100,000 years ago. That nobody is exactly sure how big the human race was before this point, but through mitochondrial DNA research, we know that something knocked down the human race to a population between 6 and 10,000 surviving humans, which, given 80 to 100,000 years, that's the smallest genetically viable population that we have that could produce the amount of people and the genetic diversity that we have today. And you have to take a look at that. I mean, there's no other real mass die-off that can actually explain that bottleneck. I mean, the closest that mainstream science can come to is the Toba supervolcano explosion. You know, that happened roughly at the same time, but you kind of have to play with the timelines a little bit, you know, to make that explanation for it work. It doesn't exactly jive if you really look into it. And you just have to think, if somebody wanted to manipulate the human race, and either through, you know, intentionally or through some other reason, the population's knocked down to about 5,000 to 6,000 people. If you wanted to introduce some type of genetic program, or possibly, you know, some type of long-term genetic program, that would be the perfect time to do it. If you've only got 5,000 people left, you could see, let's say, extraterrestrial genes A through F in a certain number of the population. These people would eventually mix and mingle and interbreed with each other, and pretty soon alien gene A would meet alien gene F and produce another subset, and so on and so forth through all the generations. Who knows? Maybe we're a science experiment or something like that, and the contactees that are being contacted now by extraterrestrials, you know, are the products of this experiment. And it's just one of those interesting theories out there. I mean, something did almost wipe out the human race that long ago, and if I was going to introduce some type of program like that, I'd think that would be the perfect time to do it.
Oh, Jason, while I'm thinking about this, I just heard November call. I was with the phone.
Of course, I believe in reincarnation, so I don't care. I know there are spiritual masters. I've met spiritual masters. You know, that's another totally different subject. There is what you call the Right Brotherhood and those things, and they're not ETs. They're higher vibrating beings on an inner dimension. So the only thing that I ever observed with the UFO community that really amused me is that they were real conspiracy theorists, and that they were very much a paranoid group, you know. But I look at the spiritual side of things too, not just you know, you can't give people readings and tell them when people are going to be born and die and get married and get a job and everything for going on 47 years and not believe in consciousness beyond what people experience every day. So.
Oh, I agree with you. I mean, I personally think that reincarnation is something that happened. I mean, I can't definitively prove it, but I would go out on a limb.
You can't prove love either. It's one of those ephemeral things, you know.
True. I would go out on a limb and say that, you know, I have some little snippets here and there that I could attribute to some type of past life experience that I've observed, that I've lived through previously. I mean, you're definitely right about that one. I mean, it's, oh man, and the conspiracy theorists, that's one of the reasons that ICAR exists, because, you know, as you alluded to, quite honestly,
they're rampant in the UFO community, you know.
Well, it's almost like these poor people, they want to blame everything on the government. I mean, it just kind of gets ridiculous when you've got a lot of people that are sitting here having these extraterrestrial contact experiences, and then you have some expert on the internet out there saying, no, you're just being snowballed by the U.S. government. It's Project Bluebeam and mind control, and none of this crap's happening to you. The government's so evil, they're doing everything. You know, you just kind of see a lot of people in this field that they look at it with a particular dogma, and their dogma completely and totally dictates what their views on the subject are going to be. And, you know, this is what I say. Anybody out there taking a look into the field, you know, look at it objectively. You know, take every piece of information that you come out there, you know, take it with a grain of salt. There are a lot of people out there, even most contactees, and Joe can confirm this one too, that I would have to say a contactee with a high level of recall probably remembers only 10% or so of the things that have actually happened to them. I mean, ET's doing what they're doing, and they want us aware of what's going on, I believe, but they don't want us to have the entire script and the entire plot. They're deliberately keeping information from us for some reason. Hey, maybe it's for our own good. It's probably for their own good, because I sort of look at it.
Do they have any kind of spiritual concepts that you know about?
The reptilians do. See, it's hard because
like in Star Trek, like, you know, that Roddenberry proposed, the Star Trek stuff and all that.
But with the Greys, you've got, they really work for the light beings. And, you know, if you look at our society and what we consider to be a god, that's what the light beings would be. I mean, they can travel through time and space without a spacecraft. They can probably create by will and thought. They can manifest themselves in pretty much any shape or form that they want because they're pure energy. So
right.
if for us, if you're looking at them, you would think they're God, even though they're not. But they're probably, I mean, every description we've ever been given of God, they would fit it quite easily. Matter of fact, all the miracles from the Christian Bible, the Greys can reproduce quite easily. So, I mean,
I watch
hard.
Ancient Aliens. I watch Ancient Aliens.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, it's hard because, you know, now we know the reptilians do have a singular religion. I don't know if we can call it a religion or not. But
you know, I believe in divine mind, as I call it, and the creative force behind everything. But I can't believe that we're the only ones that were created in the grand scheme of our universe. If you just look at our universe and the fact that there could be multiple universes and parallel universes and everything else, because I love Michio Kaku and all those physics books too, then, you know, there has to be all kinds of creation out there in different forms and all of that. So what do the reptilians look like? What do the reptilians look like?
They're pretty big, on average around 7 to 8 foot
feet
tall. The males probably upwards of 5'50", the females around 4'50". But the alphas, both the alpha males and alpha females have tails. All the adolescents don't, or all the ones that are not in those positions don't. So they're basically, I mean, like I said, they look a lot like us, except they have what looks to be scales, but it's not scales. If you touch them, they're quite soft. They're warm, which means they're not actually reptilians because they're warm-blooded. So they're not even actually reptilians. Some of them have gills on the shoulders, and also those are amphibians. They're not even. The species is much different than what people like Ike and them portrayed them to be. They never took the time to research them. You know, people describe them as reptilians because they do kind of look like a lizard in the face, and they've got ridges on their heads and down their spines and tails on some of them. So in that aspect, they do look like a reptilian, but in reality, that's not what they are. In order to share DNA
there was
with us,
there was a blonde bombshell at one of the UFO conferences who said she was having an affair with a reptilian.
Oh, must be Colleen Thomas.
I thought she must have weird taste. That girl.
Oh no, there's a lot of women that say that. By the way, there's actually quite a few.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
You know, going by some of the abduction
wouldn't be
accounts,
my choice.
No.
Well, you know, of the three big races, you know, the humanoid humans, the Greys, and the reptilians. I mean, it genuinely seems like the reptilians are the most like us. I mean, it's almost like you can understand how their emotions and, you know, just the way that they carry themselves works. I mean, they really act more like humans than either the Greys or, you know, even the human aliens tend to. That's just one of the observations. And as far as reptilian research goes, you know, going back 20 years ago or so, there wasn't very much information about these reptilians. I mean, especially like, I'm sure you remember back during the 80s with, you can give Whitley Strieber a lot of credit for it, but there almost seems like there was.
Show with him. I'm going to try to get him on a show.
Whitley's an interesting person, and I got to give him credit. We probably wouldn't be here in this field if it wasn't for some of his work. I mean, he more or less came out in the mid-'80s, and it's like, blam, all of a sudden extraterrestrial contact was put out there on the stage for everybody to see, and people actually started considering it. But
and John Mack, when he thought everybody was having a psychosis, and he did all of his interviews of the abductees, he found out that a lot of them actually had very spiritual experiences.
And that's what a lot of the
they weren't crazy. You know?
Well, that's kind of the path that I went down. I mean, I'd seen that UFO, and I kind of wanted to prove that alien abductions were wrong. I wanted to find the fatal flaw in all of these people and be like, aha, there's crazy. There's no chance that them or me are being abducted by aliens. But you're right. As Dr. Mack concluded, I mean, he was one of the first big names in there. I mean, what was he, a tenured professor at Harvard, I believe?
Yes,
Princeton?
He was, right,
yeah,
right,
Harvard.
right.
You know, he was one of the first people, you know, with tenure and credentials in his field to actually take a look at this subject, and he came to much the same conclusions that I have, that These
Right.
people
I have
aren't
his
crazy.
book. Yeah. Yeah.
And in fact, there are, these things are going on. I mean, I have to give
Well,
him.
he thought it was. You see, I look at my personal view toward reincarnation is our chance for spiritual evolution of our souls. You know, we can backslide, but we hopefully go forward and learn our lessons and refine our nature in terms of reincarnation. So, you know, that's why I wondered if any of the ETs believed in rebirth or anything.
You know, honestly,
and I think the it's interesting to me that a lot of the abductees do believe in reincarnation.
Yeah.
Well, that's
as
true,
you mentioned.
none of the contactees that I know that I consider legitimate, even some of the ones I consider in my inner circle, I can't recall any of them, ever recalling an encounter incident where an extraterrestrial of any type, sat down with them and, told them their creation stories or broke out their version of the Bible.
Okay.
I mean, I suppose that depends on what the extraterrestrial concept of God is, if they even have one. I mean, me personally, I think that I don't believe in some man in a giant white suit. I mean, I'm not an atheist or necessarily agnostic either. But
anthropological God, yeah.
I mean, I think that the universe itself may be very well creation, and that, us and all other sentient beings may be parts of the universe made manifest in an attempt to better understand itself. But then again, that's just, one of my ideas. I mean, I guess I just have to say that, no, I haven't heard of any extraterrestrials sitting down and preaching spirituality to a person. But then again, I've never heard of them, belittling or, questioning anybody for their true spiritual beliefs. I mean, as Joe said, that's where the whole, you can invoke the name of Jesus and stop an alien abduction thing comes from. That comes from a subset of ufology, the weird Christian ufologists. Like I mentioned, there are a lot of people that look at this topic and it's completely and totally tainted by their dogmas. Well, they're looking at it from a biblical perspective, and honestly, they can't see aliens and extraterrestrials as anything but, deceiving, evil, deceptive demons.
Well, I know. I had a client once, and I told her I'd just been to a UFO conference, and it was really fascinating. She says, "Oh, that's the work of the devil." And I thought, oh, God.
Well, I'll just put it this way. I mean, like Joe mentioned earlier, I mean, they're not exactly forthcoming. I mean, for the most part, they're taking people without their will and doing things to them and not asking you about it.
Yeah, they're taking.
You could say that's bad, but I mean, if they were really evil, they'd never put us back. What are we going to do? Somebody's going to file a missing persons report at a police station somewhere. I mean, there's ET could basically do whatever they wanted to with no ramifications to us. So I can't exactly say they're bad either. I mean, the part of the reason I'm in this field is I'm trying to figure out is A, what do they want with the humans they choose to contact? And B, if they want something out of us, why can't they do these things themselves? And you have to look at
Why can't they ask? Why can't they ask?
Well, yeah, exactly. I mean, they could be a whole lot.
Give me an egg or some sperm or something.
Well, they could either be a lot nicer or B, a whole lot meaner about it. So, I can't go off on a limb and say they're malevolent or benevolent, either way. All I can say is that, well, it's kind of weird that once a lot of contactees become aware that that extraterrestrials have an interest in them, it's almost as if they want to be able to go along with this. I mean, most people want to know simply just to know what's happening to them. And ET's it's almost as if they're leaving you a trail of breadcrumbs to follow. I don't know, it's kind of weird. I'm assuming there's got to be a method to their madness somehow. I mean, I hate being able to not answer questions in absolutes, but I mean, even the people that are experiencing this phenomenon, there's a lot that we don't know that we're trying to figure out.
But neither one of you have been abducted, is that correct?
Well, I would never say that.
I
would never say that. Couldn't go there with all the stuff that we're involved in.
I'll put it this way.
Have you been on any ships lately?
I can't say no, I haven't been abducted. I mean, the way it works with me is I have a lot of what I believe are cover memories, just like almost fake scenarios that sort of melt once you, sort of see through the illusion of them. I don't know. It's just, I don't have any conscious memory of being awake and having an alien right there in front of me and touching it, but I have a lot of subconscious and other things that I can't definitively say, no, I'm not a contactee. So I guess you'd have to say, yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm glad they've left me
You're
alone.
eligible to receive it.
Is there something you guys want to say to wrap it up here? We don't have that much time left.
I see that. We're just running out fast.
Yeah, where'd the time go?
Yeah, it's really been interesting, though. I mean, what would you say is the most important aspect of your work?
I'd have to say the most important aspect of our work is there are people out there that, well, first off,
how do people contact you? The website is icar1.com.
Yes,
yes,
ma'am.
That
is
one of the ways
that's
you
the
can
one
get to
that
us.
Joe gave me online today.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can get a hold of us.
Contact.
You can get a hold of us on Facebook through Pal Talk. We use a lot of the social media, trying to get the word out there. I'd have to say the most important part of our work is that, look, if you're out there and you either know or you believe or have some strong reason to believe that the extraterrestrials consider you a person of interest and have contacted you, look, all I'm saying is you're not alone. There are others out there that are in completely and totally the same boat, that we're all trying to figure out what exactly is going on with us here. And that's really what ICAR's main goal is, to raise awareness of the topic, to find other people that have had these experiences. And once we got enough of the puzzle pieces together, to ultimately try to finally put a picture together of what exactly is going on here and why they're interested in us. That's what we're all about this for. I mean,
do you want to give out a phone number? Do you want to give out telephone numbers?
Oh, go ahead, Joe.
Actually, you can do 504-273-7379. That rings into our Skype system, whereas there's a record. There's another number actually on the ICAR website. It's our abduction and sighting line. It drops into one of the voice services so that we can review them and call back. Also, any one of, I have 8 Facebook accounts and a MySpace account, so you can reach us on any one of those. Jason's on Facebook. Almost all of our directors are on Facebook. Before we go to Jason, why don't you plug November's project real quick? Because she called while we were on the air. I heard her voicemail come in.
Yeah, we've actually got a couple of things. November Hansen is our Oregon State Director, and she's also our Director in charge of research projects. She's got 2 projects that we are getting ready to go ahead and launch and make public. One of them is a dream survey. One of the things that we've noticed is that a lot of the information that people get about their contact experiences somehow manifests itself through dreams. I mean, you got dreams that are random babblings of the subconscious. You've got dreams that are entirely something else, and especially concerning that little twilight in between awake and asleep phase. We've got a survey that asks specific questions, regarding people's dream experiences, the amount of information that they receive from those. And we're trying to flesh out a little bit more statistical information about people who are also in the twilight phase. It's one of our projects that, the dream thing is very important to most contactees, and we're trying to get a little bit better of a handle on that. And November's also getting ready to launch our ICAR event tracker. As I alerted to earlier, the way I've been doing research previously in the past is, I've got a number of people that I'm in contact with. If anything weird or wonky or significant happens, I would like them to report it to me. I've been keeping it all in my head, but now with the ICAR event tracker, we'll actually have that on paper in a spreadsheet. And instead of me giving you my impressions on hearing things from a few people, I'll actually be able to give you some statistics and some data to show you who, what, when, where, and how is experiencing these things. I mean, it's an evolution of, basically what I'm doing, which is something that needed to be done.
It really is too. I mean, it's a great project, but you know, an ICAR has at least another dozen. We have the Greys, the Reptilians, the Humans, the Blood Types, Middle Lab. There's at least another 7 or 8 projects running concurrently with these, and these all stay ongoing projects. We don't ever shut them down, which means data is forever coming in. As long as the organization's around, we'll be accumulating data. I can tell you this: there's never been an organization like this one before. There's no one out there doing what we're doing right now. No one's ever taken on the amount of studies or even come close to dealing with the amount of contactees. To put it in perspective, if you took every research in the field and you took all their contactees and combined them, it still wouldn't be a third of that, probably not even a quarter.
I think you're doing a very good work. I think it's very good, and it's good for me to know who to refer somebody to if they do have one of these weird experiences they don't understand. I have had quite a few. I have a chapter in my memoir called UFOs and the Alien Presence, and it has some interesting stories in there. And part of it had to do with how one of my friend's husbands, who was in the insurance business, was flown out to a secret location in the Nevada desert. He said there really were aliens there. So I guess our government is working with aliens too, but they don't.
They're involved.
Well, this is kind of the way that I look at the whole government. I mean, there are some people out there, as you mentioned, the conspiracy theorists, they think that it's all government. I would have to say this: if I was the United States government or a shadow government or any other big government or anything like that, and something was going around and grabbing my citizens and entering and leaving my airspace with complete and total impunity, and I had no way to stop these things even if I wanted to, you know, I think I would look over the shoulders of the contactees myself, because quite honestly, that's where all of the information about
I only have 60 seconds left, you guys, and I do want to make an announcement. There will be no radio show the next 2 weeks. I will be taking a break, but on November the 11th, Medium, this is a medium who talks to dead people, intuitive medium, Patty Ortail will be on, and she will give ratings to our callers the last 30 minutes of the show. So I will have a medium on, and then the Sunday after that, I think it's the 18th, I'll be doing a show on the tarot, divination, and development. But thank you guys for being on my show today. It's really amazing. I'll let you know what the numbers were like when I find out. I usually don't find out till tomorrow, and I'll let you know how many other people listen during the week. Tune in next time.
Thank you, Patty. It's been a pleasure being on your show, and welcome back to the air.